The first time I saw my name inside a Mafia contract, I realized my father had not just ruined his life. He had spent mine too. Rain crawled down the kitchen window in crooked silver lines, blurring the streetlights outside our third-floor apartment until the whole block looked like it was drowning. I stood in the doorway with my diner uniform still smelling like coffee, fryer oil, and lemon disinfectant, my shoes soaked through from the 8-block walk home because the bus had stopped running early again. It was 12:17 in the morning in South Chicago, cold enough that my fingers ached around my keys, and the first thing I heard was my father laughing at something that was not funny. Raymond Carter sat at the kitchen table with his shirt half-buttoned, his gray hair sticking up, and a bottle of cheap bourbon resting beside his elbow like an old friend. The yellow light above him flickered every few seconds, making his face look different each time it came back. Older. Smaller. Meaner. I should have turned around. I should have gone to the 24-hour laundromat on Halsted and slept with my backpack under my head like I had done once before. Instead, I stepped inside because this was still technically home, and because daughters are trained to keep hoping long after hope has become embarrassing. "You're late," he said without looking at me. My wrist tightened around my purse strap. There was still a dull mark there from the night before, hidden under my sleeve, not serious enough for anyone else to care, but familiar enough to make my stomach close. "I picked up an extra shift," I said. "Rent is due Friday." He smiled at the table. Not at me. At the table. That was when I noticed the envelope. Black. Thick. Too expensive for our apartment. It sat between an ashtray and an unpaid electric bill, sealed with a silver crest I did not recognize. A raven with its wings spread. My name was written across the front in sharp black ink. Emily Carter. Not Ray Carter. Not Raymond. Me. The room seemed to shrink around that envelope. The refrigerator hummed too loudly. Water dripped into the sink from the faucet Dad swore he would fix 3 months ago. Somewhere downstairs, a baby started crying, then stopped. "What is that?" I asked. My father reached for the bottle, missed it, then laughed again under his breath. "Nothing you need to worry about." I walked to the table and picked it up before he could stop me. His chair scraped back. "Emily." My name came out flat. Warning-shaped. I froze for half a second, the old reflex catching in my bones, but I was too tired to obey fear that night. Too tired from smiling at customers who snapped their fingers for refills. Too tired from counting quarters at the gas station. Too tired from pretending my father's mistakes were storms I could outwait. I broke the seal. Inside was a contract, 3 pages of clean white paper that felt heavier than anything I had ever held. At first, the words made no sense. Principal balance. Late penalties. Collateral. Personal guarantee. My eyes moved faster, searching for something ordinary, something explainable, but every line pulled the floor farther away from me. Then I saw the amount. $850,000. My breath left me in a sound so small it embarrassed me. "Dad," I whispered. "What did you do?" He rubbed both hands over his face, suddenly sober enough to look frightened. That scared me more than the number. My father had been angry. Bitter. Cruel in the careless way broken men sometimes are. But frightened? Almost never. "I had a plan," he muttered. "You always have a plan." My voice cracked, but I kept reading. And then I found the sentence that changed the temperature of the room. In the event of default, debtor agrees to transfer guardianship of pledged domestic asset, Emily and Carter, as negotiated security under Blackwood private terms. The words did not feel real. Domestic asset? Negotiated security. My fingers went numb around the paper. "You put me in a debt contract?" I asked. He stood too fast and grabbed the back of his chair to steady himself. "It's not like that." "Then tell me what it's like." He looked toward the window, toward the wet street below, toward anywhere that was not my face. "You don't understand men like Damian Blackwood." The name moved through the apartment like a door opening in the dark. I had heard it before at the diner in whispers from men who stopped talking when servers came too close. Blackwood owned clubs, restaurants, warehouses, entire blocks that changed hands without signs ever going up. People said he did not raise his voice because he never had to. People said the city bent around him quietly. I looked down at the raven crest again, and my pulse started beating in my throat. "Why is my name here?" I asked. My father's mouth twisted, not with guilt, but with the ugly impatience he saved for moments when truth cornered him. "Because you're all I had left." For a second, I heard nothing. Not the rain. Not the sink. Not even my own breathing. Just that sentence, landing softly, destroying everything. You're all I had left. As if love and ownership had ever been the same thing. As if raising me gave him the right to spend me. I folded the contract slowly, because if my hands moved too fast, they would shake. "I'm calling a lawyer." He laughed, but there was panic inside it now. "With what money, Emily? Your tip jar? Your nursing school savings? You think a lawyer is going to scare Blackwood?" My phone was already in my hand when headlights washed across the ceiling. Once. Twice. Then a third time. Bright white beams cut through the rain and filled our kitchen with moving shadows. My father stopped laughing. Outside, engines idled at the curb, deep and smooth, the kind that belonged to vehicles with tinted windows and men who never worried about parking tickets. I moved to the window and looked down. 3 black SUVs were lined up in front of our building. Their doors opened almost at the same time. Men in dark suits stepped into the rain without umbrellas. And then one man stepped out last. Tall. Still. Wearing a black coat that did not move in the wind. Even from 3 floors up, I knew he was the reason the others waited. My father whispered something behind me, but I barely heard it over the sound of footsteps entering the building below. Slow. Measured. Coming closer. I looked at the contract in my hand, at my name printed beneath a debt I had never made, and for the first time in my life, I understood that some cages do not have bars. Some arrive wearing your father's signature. The footsteps reached the 2nd floor, then the 3rd, each one calm enough to make my skin tighten. My father moved first, stumbling toward the kitchen drawer where he kept old receipts, loose batteries, and useless things he called protection. "Do not," I said. My voice surprised me. It was quiet, but it cut through the room. He looked at me like he did not know who had spoken. Maybe I did not either. The knocking came 3 seconds later. Not pounding. Not shouting. Just 3 steady knocks against the apartment door, polite enough to be terrifying. My father's face had gone the color of wet newspaper. The bottle on the table trembled when his hand brushed it. I still held the contract, my name burning through the paper into my palm. "Emily," he whispered, "let me talk." That was the first time I almost laughed. After 24 years of cleaning up his messes, dodging his moods, and stretching my paycheck over his empty promises, he still thought words could save him. The lock clicked before either of us touched the door. Not forced. Not broken. Opened with the clean confidence of someone who already owned every key. 2 men stepped in first, both wearing black suits darkened at the shoulders from the rain. They did not look around with curiosity. They looked around like they had already memorized the room. Then Damien Blackwood entered, and the apartment became too small for him. He was taller than I expected, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, with dark hair combed back from a face so controlled it looked almost carved. His skin was pale under the yellow kitchen light, his jaw clean-shaven, his eyes a cold gray that did not rush over anything. They moved from my father, to the bottle, to the envelope seal broken on the table, to me. He paused there. Not long. Just enough for my pulse to notice. Rain clung to the shoulders of his black coat, but he did not seem wet. He seemed like the kind of man weather asked permission to touch. "Raymond Carter," he said. His voice was low, smooth, and completely American, with the faintest edge of old money and colder rooms. "You missed our meeting." My father swallowed. "Mr. Blackwood, I was going to call." "No," Damien removed one black leather glove finger by finger. You were going to hide. No one raised their voice. No one moved fast. That somehow made it worse. The men by the door stood still, hands folded in front of them, blocking the only exit without making it obvious. My father tried to smile. It looked painful. I can get your money. Damien looked at the unpaid bills on the counter. The cracked linoleum. The stain on the ceiling from the upstairs leak our landlord never fixed. You cannot get me $850,000. The number sounded different in his mouth. Cleaner. Final. My father's eyes flicked toward me. I saw the movement before Damien did, or maybe Damien saw it and simply waited. Something inside me sank. Do not look at her, Damien said. My father froze. She is my daughter. Damien's gaze did not leave him. Then you should have remembered that before you wrote her name into my contract. The room tilted. I hated that he said it. I hated more that he was right. I stepped forward, even though every instinct told me to stay near the wall. I did not sign anything. Damien finally turned to me fully. Up close, his eyes were not just gray. They were the color of winter clouds before a storm, sharp and unreadable. I know. 2 words. They should have comforted me. They did not. Then this has nothing to do with me, I said, holding up the papers. My hand was steady now, which felt like a miracle. Whatever he owes you, that is between you and him. My father made a small sound, almost a plea. Damien heard it. So did I. Raymond offered you as collateral, Damien said. I refused the first version. My stomach went cold. The first version? He came back with a second. I turned slowly toward my father. He would not look at me. That was answer enough. A strange quiet filled my chest. Not peace. Not courage. Something emptier. The final thread snapping between who I wished he was and who he had chosen to be. Why are you here? I asked Damien. He studied me for a moment, as if the question mattered more than the debt. Because your father has 48 hours left on a deadline he has already failed. My father lurched forward. Please. I just need time. Damien's expression did not change. You had 6 months. I have family. You gambled with family. The words landed soft, but my father flinched like they had weight. I looked at the black SUVs through the rain-streaked window, then at the men by the door, then at the contract with my name printed like a price tag. I understood the shape of the trap then. My father had put me in it, but Damien Blackwood had come to close it. What happens if he cannot pay? I asked. Damien looked at me, and for the first time, something moved behind his eyes. Not pity. Not kindness. Recognition, maybe. As if he knew exactly what it cost me to ask without shaking. That depends, he said. On what? His answer came without hesitation. On what you are willing to do to keep him breathing free air. My father whispered my name. I did not turn around. I was too busy watching the most feared man in Chicago look at me like I was not a daughter, not a waitress, not a girl in wet shoes and a cheap uniform, but a decision about to be made. Then Damien reached into his coat and placed a second document on the table. A marriage license application. My breath stopped. He tapped one finger beside the blank line where my signature would go. Your father already offered you, he said quietly. I am giving you the chance to choose the terms. I stared at the marriage license application until the letters blurred into black lines. The rain kept tapping the window behind me, soft and steady, like the whole city was pretending this was a normal night. My father was breathing too loudly near the stove. The 2 men by the door did not blink. Damien Blackwood stood across from me with one glove still in his hand, patient in the way only powerful men could afford to be. No, I said. The word came out thin, but it came out. My father made a broken sound. Emily, think about what you are doing. That finally made me turn. I am thinking, I said. That is the problem. His eyes were wet, but not with remorse. Fear had made him soft for the moment, and I hated that some part of me still wanted to mistake it for love. He reached for me, then stopped when Damien's gaze shifted to his hand. Nothing else happened. No threat. No order. Just a look, and my father let his arm fall. I hated Damien for having that kind of power. I hated my father more for respecting it. This is not a marriage, I said, facing Damien again. It is a transaction. Yes, he said. No apology. No lie. And what do you get? Leverage. Over me? Over every man who thinks Raymond Carter can still sell what does not belong to him. The sentence hit a place in me I had kept locked for years. I looked down at my sleeve, at the faint shadow around my wrist, then back at the blank signature line. I do not belong to him, I said. Damien's eyes held mine. Then prove it. The room went quiet enough for me to hear the old pipes knocking in the wall. I wanted to throw the papers in his face. I wanted to run down the stairwell, past the black SUVs, into the freezing rain, and keep running until Chicago became a bad dream behind me. But I had $37 in my checking account, a nursing school bill due Monday, and a father who had just shown me exactly how much my life was worth to him. $850,000 and a signature. If I sign, I said carefully. He walks away. Damien's jaw tightened, almost too briefly to notice. He walks away from tonight. That is not an answer. For the first time, something close to approval crossed his face. It is the only honest one. My father stepped closer. Take it, Em. Please. Just do this one thing for me. One thing. As if I had not been doing one thing for him since I was 12. One more unpaid bill. One more apology to a landlord. One more lie to a teacher about why I was tired. One more night listening for the sound of his key in the lock and measuring what kind of mood entered with him. I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake until the tip touched the paper. Damien noticed. Of course he noticed. You can still say no, he said. I looked at him then, really looked at him. Would it change anything? For you, yes. For him? Damien did not answer. That was honest too. I signed Emily and Carter in blue ink because the black pen on the table was dead. It felt like a ridiculous detail to remember, but trauma makes souvenirs out of the smallest things. The cheap pen. The flickering light. The smell of bourbon. My father exhaling like I had just opened a door for him instead of closing one behind myself. Damien picked up the paper, glanced at my signature, then folded it with care. We leave now. Now? My voice rose before I could stop it. I have clothes. School. Work tomorrow. Someone will handle it. No, I said, sharper this time. My life is not a coat you can send someone to collect. The man by the door looked at Damien. He did not look away from me. Pack one bag, he said. 5 minutes. It was not kindness, but it was room to breathe. I went to my bedroom with my father following 2 steps behind me. My room was barely bigger than a closet, with a twin bed, a cracked mirror, and anatomy flashcards taped above my desk. I pulled my backpack from the chair and shoved in jeans, scrubs, socks, my nursing textbooks, and the framed photo of my mother from before sickness made her small. My father stood in the doorway, crying quietly now. You are saving me, he whispered. I zipped the bag and looked at him. For years I had imagined that if he ever said those words, they would make me feel noble. Instead, they made me feel empty. No, I said. I am surviving you. Downstairs, the rain had turned the sidewalk into black glass. Damien's men opened the rear door of the middle SUV. My father stayed under the awning, arms wrapped around himself, already looking less like a man I had saved and more like a stranger who had watched me leave. I stopped before getting in. Why marriage? I asked Damien. The city lights reflected in his gray eyes. Because contracts can be challenged, he said. A wife is harder to erase. My stomach tightened, but before I could answer, He opened the door wider and stepped back, giving me space instead of pushing me forward. That small distance confused me more than anything else that night. I climbed inside, soaked and shaking, with my backpack pressed to my chest. Damien entered from the other side, leaving a full seat between us. The SUV pulled away from the curb. My father disappeared behind rain and tinted glass. I waited for Damien to touch me, command me, claim some victory over what had just happened. He did none of those things. He only looked out at the city and said, quietly enough that I almost missed it, "I do not take what is not given." The SUV carried me north through streets I knew and into neighborhoods I had only seen from bus windows, where old brick gave way to glass towers and every block looked washed clean by money. Chicago blurred beyond the tinted window, all wet pavement, red taillights, and the silver shine of rain under street lamps. I kept my backpack on my lap with both arms around it, as if my textbooks and 2 pairs of jeans could anchor me to the person I had been before I signed my name away. Damien sat beside the opposite door, one long leg crossed over the other, his coat folded neatly across his knee. He did not speak. That should have helped. Instead, his silence filled the car until I could hear every sound my body made. My breathing. My swallowing. The small squeak of my wet shoes against the floor mat. I watched his reflection in the window because looking directly at him felt too honest. "Where are we going?" I asked after 20 minutes. "Home," he said. The words scraped through me. "You're home." His eyes shifted to mine in the dark glass. "For now." I wanted to argue, but the city had already opened into a private road lined with bare trees and iron lamps. At the end stood a mansion of limestone and black-framed windows, half hidden behind a gate that opened before the SUV stopped. It did not look like a house. It looked like a courthouse that had learned to keep secrets. Warm light glowed from tall windows, reflecting off the wet driveway. Men in dark coats stood near the entrance, not crowded, not casual, just present. Every detail was quiet and controlled. The car stopped beneath a stone awning. Damien stepped out first, then waited. No hand reached for me. No command followed. The door on my side opened from the outside, and cold air swept in, carrying the smell of rain, pine, and expensive stone. I climbed out on my own. My legs felt stiff from fear and exhaustion. Inside, the foyer rose 2 stories high, with a curved staircase, marble floors, and a chandelier bright enough to turn every raindrop on my coat into a tiny star. I should have been impressed. Mostly, I felt dirty. My diner uniform clung to me. My hair had come loose from its ponytail. My backpack looked ridiculous against so much polished silence. A woman in her 50s appeared near the staircase, pale-skinned, silver-haired, dressed in a navy dress that made her look more like the head of a private school than household staff. "Mr. Blackwood," she said. "The East Room is ready." Damien nodded. "Thank you, Mrs. Vale. This is Emily Carter." Her eyes moved over me, not unkindly, but carefully. "Miss Carter." "Mrs. Blackwood," Damien corrected. The title landed between us like a glass dropped on stone. I turned to him. "Do not call me that." The foyer went still. Somewhere nearby, a clock ticked once. Twice. Damien looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Noted." Just that. Noted. No anger. No warning. I hated that I did not know what to do with restraint. Mrs. Vale led me upstairs through a hallway lined with paintings of ships, storm clouds, and men who looked as cold as their frames. At the end, she opened a door to a bedroom larger than our entire apartment. There was a 4-poster bed, cream curtains, a fireplace already lit, and a bathroom glowing with white tile and brass fixtures. On a chair near the bed sat folded pajamas, a robe, and a pair of soft slippers. I stared at them as if they might bite. "I did not ask for this," I said. Mrs. Vale's face softened by half an inch. "No one said you did?" Damien stood in the doorway, not crossing the threshold. That detail lodged in my chest. He could have walked in. It was his house. His room, maybe. his rules. Instead, he stayed outside the line of the door like it mattered. "You will stay here," he said. "My room is down the hall." I looked past him into the corridor. "Am I locked in?" He reached into his pocket and placed a small brass key on the table inside the doorway. Not in his hand. Not close enough to make me take it from him. On the table. "Every door locks from your side." I stared at the key. My throat tightened for a reason I did not understand. In my father's apartment, doors were thin things. They kept out weather, not fear. Locks meant someone angry could still get through if they wanted badly enough. But here, in the house of a man everyone feared, a locked door was being handed to me like a promise. "Why?" I asked. Damien's face remained unreadable, but his voice dropped slightly. "Because a cage does not need a key." The fire snapped softly behind me. My wet sleeve clung to my wrist, and his gaze flicked there for the briefest second before returning to my face. He had seen the mark. Of course he had. Men like Damien Blackwood survived by noticing everything. "Mrs. Vale will bring food," he said. "A doctor can come if you need one." "I do not." "All right." No argument. No pressure. He turned to leave, then paused with one hand near the doorframe. "Emily." My name sounded different in his mouth. Less like a burden. More like something handled carefully. I hated that too. "This house has rules. But none of them require you to be afraid of me." Then he walked away, his footsteps fading down the hall. Mrs. Vale left a moment later, closing the door gently behind her. I stood alone in the beautiful room with the brass key on the table and rain tapping against tall windows. For the first time in years, no one was shouting. No one was demanding. No one was waiting for me to fix what they had broken. I should have felt trapped. Instead, as I picked up the key with shaking fingers, I felt the first dangerous edge of something worse. Relief. By morning, the mansion looked less like a secret and more like a museum pretending to be a home. Sunlight moved across the marble floors in pale rectangles, too clean, too quiet, too far from the apartment where I usually woke to traffic, shouting, and the pipes complaining behind the walls. I had slept for maybe 2 hours, still in the borrowed pajamas Mrs. Vale had left on the chair, with the brass key clutched under my pillow like a child hiding treasure. From monsters. No one came in. No one tried the handle. No one raised a voice outside my door. That should have calmed me. Instead, the silence made me restless. I showered, changed into the cleanest jeans I had packed, and found my diner uniform folded in a laundry bag beside my shoes. Someone had dried it. Someone had polished my cheap black sneakers until they looked almost new. I did not know whether to feel grateful or watched. Downstairs, breakfast waited in a dining room long enough to host 20 people who probably never said anything honest. Damien sat at the far end with a black coffee, a tablet, and 3 phones arranged beside his plate. He wore a charcoal suit and a white shirt with the cuffs buttoned perfectly. He looked awake in the way wealthy men always seemed awake, like exhaustion was something they hired other people to do. "You have class at 9:30, he said without looking up. I stopped in the doorway. "How do you know my schedule?" "It was in your bag." Heat moved up my neck. "You went through my bag?" His eyes lifted then, calm and gray. "Mrs. Vale did. To wash your clothes. Your planner fell out." "That does not make it better." "No," he said. "It explains it." I hated how often his honesty left me with nothing easy to throw back. "I am going to school," I said. "And work after. A driver will take you." "I take the bus." "Not today." I was not asking permission. Something shifted at the table, not in his face, but in the air around him. Neither was I. The old fear tried to rise, sharp and automatic, but I pushed it down because this was not my father's kitchen and I was not 12 years old anymore. "You said every door locks from my side." "It does." "Then let me walk through one." For several seconds, Damien only looked at me. Then he picked up one of the phones and spoke into it. "Bring the car around." Miss Carter is going to campus. Not Mrs. Blackwood. Miss Carter. I noticed. I wished I had not. The days should have felt normal once I was away from the mansion, but nothing about riding to community college in a black town car felt normal. The driver, a quiet man named Ellis, kept both hands on the wheel and never asked questions. Students crossed the parking lot in hoodies and backpacks, laughing into paper coffee cups, while I stepped out of a car that cost more than my father had earned in 2 years. I felt their eyes. Maybe they were not staring. Maybe guilt makes a spotlight out of air. By lunch, my phone had 23 missed calls from my father. I ignored the first 10. Then the voicemail came. His voice sounded small, ragged, almost like the man I kept trying to remember from before everything got hard. Please. I need to see you. Just 5 minutes. I messed up. I know I did. I want to make it right. I stood outside the nursing lab with the phone pressed to my ear and my stomach folding in on itself. He gave an address near the hospital where I worked part-time, a coffee shop on West Taylor Street. Public. Safe. That was what I told myself. I did not tell Damien. I told myself it was because he did not own my choices. The truth was uglier. Some part of me still wanted my father to be worth saving. I asked Ellis to drop me 2 blocks away from the diner and said I wanted to walk. He hesitated, then nodded. The coffee shop was nearly empty, its windows fogged from the heater, the smell of burnt espresso and cinnamon filling the air. My father sat in the back booth wearing the same jacket from the night before. He looked smaller in daylight. Softer. Almost harmless. Emily, he said, standing too quickly. Thank God. I did not let him hug me. His arms dropped, and his face crumpled just enough to hurt. Say what you need to say. He rubbed his hands together. I am sorry. 2 words. 24 years late. I waited for more. He glanced toward the front window, then back at me. Blackwood is dangerous. You do not know what he is. I know what you are. His mouth tightened. For 1 second, the softness slipped. Then he put it back on. I was scared. I did something terrible because I was scared. But I can fix it if you help me. My chest went cold. Help you how? His eyes moved past me again. This time I turned. Across the street, a dark sedan idled at the curb. Not Damien's. Not one of the SUVs from last night. My father whispered, Do not make a scene. The coffee in my stomach turned bitter. What did you do? He reached for my hand, but I pulled away so fast the table shook. His face hardened. Not much. Just enough for me to see the man beneath the apology. You are worth more married than free, he said under his breath. The sentence was so quiet that no one else heard it. But I did. I heard it like a door locking. Outside, the sedan's back door opened, and 2 men stepped onto the wet sidewalk. My father looked at me with panic and greed fighting behind his eyes. Emily, listen to me. But I was already standing, already backing away. Already understanding that the man I had married to save my father might be the only reason I survived being his daughter. I moved toward the front door of the coffee shop, but my father stepped into my path with a smile that looked borrowed from a stranger. Emily, wait, he said too loudly now, like we were only having a normal family disagreement in public. The barista glanced up from the espresso machine. A college student near the window lowered her phone. For 1 bright second, I thought witnesses would save me. Then the 2 men from the sedan entered, and the whole shop seemed to understand at once that silence was safer than curiosity. They wore dark coats, not as polished as Damien's men, not as still. Their shoes left wet prints on the tile. One of them looked at my father, then at me, and nodded like a price had been confirmed. My heart did something painful against my ribs. Dad, I whispered. Please tell me you did not. He would not meet my eyes. That was the answer. I backed away until my shoulder hit a small table, rattling a ceramic mug. I am leaving, I said. My voice shook, but I made it loud enough for the room to hear. I do not consent to go anywhere with you or with them. The words sounded strange, legal, almost too clean for the panic rising in my throat, but my nursing instructor had once told us that clarity mattered when fear tried to make you small. One of the men smiled without warmth. Nobody wants trouble, sweetheart. Then stop walking toward me. He did not. I grabbed my phone from my coat pocket, but my fingers slipped on the screen. Before I could dial, headlights flashed through the fogged window. Not 2. Not 3. A line of black vehicles pulled along the curb with the calm precision of a funeral procession. The sedan outside suddenly looked cheap and lonely. The coffee shop door opened again, and Damian Blackwood stepped inside. No rush. No shouting. Just a black overcoat, gray eyes, and a silence so complete that even the espresso machine seemed to hiss softer. Ellis came in behind him, along with 2 men I recognized from the apartment building. They did not crowd the room. They did not need to. Damian's gaze found me first. Not my father. Not the men. Me. His eyes moved over my face, my hands, the table behind me, checking for damage without making a show of it. Only after that did he look at Raymond. You disappoint me, he said. My father went pale. Mr. Blackwood, this is not what it looks like. It never is with men like you. The men from the sedan shifted, suddenly less certain. One reached into his coat, then stopped when Damian turned his head slightly. No threats were spoken. No one touched anyone. But the room understood the math had changed. Damian walked past them as if they were furniture and stopped 3 feet from me. Close enough that I could see rain caught in his dark hair. Far enough that I could still breathe. Emily, he said. Did you come here willingly? My throat tightened. Not because of fear this time. Because he asked? Because in a room full of men making decisions around me, he put the question back in my hands. Yes, I said. To meet him. Not them. Damian nodded once. Do you want to leave with me? My father made a desperate sound. Emily, do not be stupid. Damian did not look away from me. Your answer is the only one that matters. I looked at my father, at the man who had taught me love could sound like an apology 1 minute and a demand the next. He looked scared again, and for the first time, his fear did not pull me toward him. It only showed me the size of the chain I had mistaken for duty. Yes, I said. Damian removed his coat and placed it around my shoulders without touching my skin. It was warm from him, heavy with rain and cedar and something clean I could not name. My hands closed around the lapels before I could stop them. Look at me, he said quietly. I did. You are not his debt anymore. The words went through me slowly, like heat returning to frozen hands. My father stepped forward. She is my daughter. Damian's voice dropped colder. Then start saying that like it means responsibility instead of ownership. No one moved. Outside, tires whispered against wet pavement. Inside, the barista's hand hovered over the register, her eyes wide. Damian turned to Ellis. Take Miss Carter to the car. Miss Carter again. Not property. Not payment. Not wife when it could be used like a leash. I walked past my father with Damian's coat around me and my phone clutched in my hand. He whispered my name once as I passed, softer than he had any right to sound. I almost stopped. Almost. Then I remembered the sentence in the booth, the sedan at the curb, the way his apology had been just another door into another cage. So I kept walking. Outside, the cold air hit my face, and I realized I had been holding my breath since the moment I saw those men step out of the car. Ellis opened the back door. I slid inside, shaking so hard the leather seat creaked beneath me. Through the window, I watched Damian remain in the coffee shop, standing between my father and the life he had tried to sell twice. For the first time, the most dangerous man in the room was not the one I feared. He was the one who had asked me what I wanted. Damian did not return to the car for 7 minutes. I counted them on the dashboard clock because counting was easier than imagining what was happening inside the coffee shop. 7 minutes of rain sliding down the windows. 7 minutes of Ellis standing outside with one hand near his earpiece, eyes scanning the street. 7 minutes of me sitting in the back seat wearing Damien's coat, trying not to breathe in the warmth of it like comfort was something I had earned. When Damien finally stepped out, my father did not follow. Neither did the men from the sedan. Damien walked through the rain with the same controlled pace, but something had changed in the line of his shoulders. He looked less like a man who had won and more like a man who had remembered something he spent years trying to bury. He entered the car, closed the door, and silence came with him. The driver pulled away from the curb. I kept my eyes on my hands. "What happened to him?" I asked. "Your father is alive. He is being watched. He will not come near you again tonight." Tonight. That word landed carefully, as if he refused to promise more than he could control. I should have been angry at that. Instead, I found myself grateful for the exact size of the truth. "And the men? Not yours to worry about." I turned toward him. "That is the kind of sentence men use when they want women quiet." Damien's jaw flexed once. Outside, the city moved past in wet streaks of red and gold. "You are right," he said. The answer took the breath out of my next argument. He looked at me then, really looked, and the cold polish in his eyes had cracked just enough for something older to show through. "They were sent by Victor Hale. Your father owed him before he owed me. Hale buys debts from desperate men and collects from whoever hurts most." My stomach folded. "So my father sold me to two different monsters." Damien's gaze dropped to his gloved hands. "One monster," he said quietly, "and one man who should have refused the contract sooner." I did not know what to do with an apology that did not ask me to comfort it. We drove in silence until the mansion gates opened again. Mrs. Vale met us in the foyer, took one look at my face, and sent hot tea to the library without asking. The library smelled like leather, cedar, and rain cooling on old stone. Books climbed the walls to a ceiling painted with clouds. Damien stood by the fireplace with his back to me, one hand resting on the mantel. For the first time, he looked tired. Not physically. Deeper than that. "Why do you hate him so much?" I asked. He did not pretend not to understand. "Your father? Men like him." The fire moved across his face when he turned. "Because my sister believed one." The room seemed to still around the words. I sat slowly in the chair nearest the door because part of me still needed to know I could leave. Damien noticed. He said nothing about it. "Her name was Claire," he continued. "She was 19. White blonde hair. Brown eyes. She laughed at everything I took too seriously." His voice stayed even, but the evenness hurt more than if it had broken. "Our father had debts. Not mine. Not hers. His. He made promises with things he did not own." My fingers tightened around the teacup Mrs. Vale had placed beside me. "With her?" Damien nodded once. "He told himself it was temporary. That he would fix it. That family had to help family. Those were his words." A chill moved through me that had nothing to do with the wet clothes drying against my skin. I had heard versions of those words my whole life. Different rooms. Same cage. "What happened?" I asked, then regretted it when his eyes went distant. He did not give me details. He only said, "By the time I understood, she had stopped asking anyone to save her." The fire snapped softly. I looked down because the sorrow in his face felt too private to witness. "I am sorry," I whispered. He gave a humorless breath. "People said that for years. It did not bring her back." "No," I said. "But maybe it means someone remembers she mattered." His eyes returned to mine then, and for a moment, the dangerous man disappeared behind the brother he had once been. The loss sat between us like a third person in the room. "The night I came for your father," he said, "I expected to find another liar trying to bargain his way out of consequences. Then I saw you holding that contract like it had cut your hand. And I saw my sister in your eyes." My throat tightened so hard I could barely speak. "I am not her." "No," he said. "You are not. That is why I am telling you this now. I do not get to turn you into my redemption. The words were rough, like they cost him something. He stepped away from the fireplace and placed a folder on the table between us. Inside were copies of my father's loans, forged signatures, bank records, and photographs of meetings I never knew had happened. Proof. Not threats. Not whispers. Proof. What is this? I asked. A way out, Damien said. For you. Not for him. I stared at the papers until the ink blurred. And our marriage? His expression changed, guarded again, but not cold. Can be undone when you choose. When I choose. The words echoed louder than any vow we had spoken. I looked at the man everyone feared, the man who had turned my life into a contract, and saw something I had not expected to see. Not softness. Not innocence. But restraint. Regret. A locked door with the key placed on my side. For the first time, I wondered if Damien Blackwood had not come into my life to own me. Maybe he had come because he knew exactly what it looked like when someone else tried. The gala took place 3 nights later in a glass ballroom above the Chicago River, where the city glittered beneath us like it had never hurt anyone. I arrived in a black dress Mrs. Vale had chosen but not forced on me, simple enough to breathe in, elegant enough that no one could immediately tell I still felt like a diner waitress borrowing another woman's life. Damien walked beside me without touching my back, without guiding my elbow, without performing ownership for the room. Somehow, that distance made people stare more. Men in tuxedos lowered their voices when we passed. Women with diamond earrings smiled too carefully. Every eye found the thin gold ring on my finger, then climbed to my face, searching for fear, scandal, weakness, anything they could name over champagne. I gave them nothing. At least I tried. Damien leaned slightly toward me as we stopped near the windows. You do not have to stay. I know. That was not politeness. I looked at him. The lights from the river moved across his face, softening nothing. I know, I said again, and this time I meant it. Across the room, reporters hovered near donors, cameras flashed, and a string quartet played something expensive and sad. The evening was supposed to be for one of Damien's charities, a scholarship fund for kids aging out of foster care. That detail had surprised me more than the mansion, more than the private cars, more than the way powerful people stepped aside for him. Monsters did not usually build escape routes for children they would never meet. Or maybe they did, when they were trying to answer for ghosts. I was reaching for a glass of ice water when the room changed. Not loudly. Just enough. A ripple near the entrance. A pause in conversation. Damien noticed before I did. His shoulders went still. I followed his gaze and saw my father walking into the ballroom in a wrinkled gray suit that did not fit him, escorted by a man with silver hair and a smile too clean to trust. Victor Hale. I knew it before anyone said his name. My father's eyes found me instantly, and my stomach dropped with the old reflex. Daughter. Fix this. Save me. Bleed quietly. Damien stepped half an inch forward. I touched his sleeve before he could move farther. He stopped. That small obedience nearly broke me. Let him come, I said. His eyes searched mine. Emily. Let him. My father crossed the room with Victor Hale behind him like a shadow that had learned to smile. Conversations thinned around us. People sensed drama the way birds sense storms. Raymond stopped a few feet away, his eyes bright with panic and performance. There is my little girl, he said loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The words wrapped around my throat like old rope. Do not call me that here. His smile twitched. What should I call you now? Mrs. Blackwood? Is that what this is? You playing queen in his house while your own father is treated like trash? A few people turned fully toward us. Phones angled slightly. Damien's face went colder than the glass behind him, but he said nothing. He had promised me before we left the mansion that if my father appeared, I would lead. I had not believed him until that moment. My father took a step closer. You think that ring makes you better than me? My hand curled at my side. The ring felt suddenly heavy, not because Damien had put it there, but because everyone in the room thought it explained me. Bought. Claimed. Saved. Owned. I looked at the gold circle on my finger, then slowly slipped it off. A hush moved through the people closest to us. Damien did not move. I placed the ring on the narrow cocktail table between us. It made the smallest sound against the glass, but I heard it like thunder. My father smiled, thinking he had won something. "That is right," he said softly. "Remember who you are." I lifted my eyes to his. "I am." My voice did not shake. That surprised me most of all. "I am the daughter who paid your rent when you spent the money. I am the girl who apologized to landlords, teachers, neighbors, and bosses for things you did. I am the woman you signed into a contract because you thought love meant access." His face hardened. "Careful." The word used to work. It used to shrink me on command. This time, it passed through the air and found no place to land. "No," I said. "You be careful. Because I am done confusing fear with respect." Victor Hale's smile faded by one careful inch. The guests were silent now, not out of politeness, but hunger. They wanted scandal. They were getting testimony. My father looked at Damien. "Are you going to let her speak to me like that?" Damien finally moved. Not in front of me. Beside me. That difference changed the room. He looked at my father as if measuring the distance between a man and the damage he left behind. "She does not need my permission to speak." My throat tightened. My father's face flushed. "She belongs to you now, does she not? That was the deal." Damien's gaze swept the room, and every whisper died. When he spoke, his voice was calm enough to be carved into stone. "She does not belong to me." He picked up the ring from the table, held it in his open palm, and turned slightly so everyone could see it was not a chain. "She stands with me because she chooses to. And if she chooses to walk away, every door opens." For a moment, no one breathed. Then Damien looked at me, not at the crowd, not at my father, only me. He offered the ring without expectation. My choice sat in his palm, small and shining under the ballroom lights. I took it, but I did not put it back on. Not yet. I held it in my fist and faced my father one last time. "I did not marry him to save you," I said. "I married him because you taught me what I had to survive." My father's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Behind him, Victor Hale was already stepping away, abandoning him with the smoothness of a man who recognized a losing investment. Damien's men appeared near the entrance, quiet as shadows, but I barely noticed them. For once, the room was not his. It was not my father's. It was mine. And as the city lights trembled across the glass, I understood that dignity does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it is just a woman taking off a ring so the world can see her hand is finally her own. After the gala, no one dragged my father from the ballroom. No one made a scene for the cameras. Damien did something far more terrifying to a man like Raymond Carter. He let the truth do the work. By morning, every document in the folder had been delivered to the right offices, not through whispers or threats, but through attorneys, investigators, and people with badges who asked questions my father could not charm his way around. Forged signatures. Fraudulent loans. False collateral claims. A paper trail built from years of small betrayals that had finally grown too large to hide. I sat in Damien's library while rain softened the tall windows, wearing jeans, a sweater, and no ring. The gold band rested on the table beside a mug of tea, catching the firelight every time the flames moved. I expected it to accuse me. Instead, it waited. Damien stood across the room with his phone to his ear, speaking in a low voice about filings, protective orders, and bank records. Words I had once thought belonged to other people. People with options. People who knew how to make a door stay closed. When he ended the call, the silence felt different from the night I first arrived. Less like a trap. More like a question. "Your father is being held for questioning," he said. Hale is already distancing himself. I nodded, but my hands stayed around the mug. Will he go to prison? Damien did not soften the answer. Possibly. It depends on what the district attorney can prove. The old guilt rose out of habit, reaching for my throat with familiar fingers. My father in a small room. My father scared. My father telling someone that his daughter had abandoned him. I waited for the guilt to become duty. It did not. It only became sadness. That was new. I thought saving him would make me good, I said. Damien crossed the room slowly and sat in the chair opposite mine, leaving the table between us. Always space. Always a way out. Sometimes saving someone means refusing to help them destroy you. I looked at him then, at the man the city called dangerous, the man who had entered my life with contracts and black cars and impossible terms. He had not become gentle. Not exactly. There was still steel in him, still shadows, still a history I would never pretend was clean. But he had placed evidence where revenge could have been. He had asked for my answer when others had assumed my silence. He had given me a key before he gave me promises. What happens now? I asked. His eyes moved to the ring on the table, then back to me. That is yours to decide. The words should have been simple. They were not. Choice felt heavier than fear because fear gave instructions. Choice asked who I was without them. I picked up the ring and turned it between my fingers. It was warm from the fire, smooth, beautiful, and no longer as heavy as it had been in the ballroom. If I leave, I said, you will let me? Yes. If I stay in the house but not as your wife? Yes. If I finish school, work my own job, pay my own bills, and never let anyone turn me into a debt again? For the first time since I had met him, Damien almost smiled. It was small, gone quickly, but real enough to change the room. Then I will make sure no one interrupts you while you do. My throat tightened. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the windows streaked and shining. Beyond them, the lawn was silver with early morning light. I thought of our old apartment, the cracked sink, the unpaid bills, the black envelope on the kitchen table. I thought of my father's voice saying I was all he had left, as if daughters were emergency funds men could break open when the world came collecting. Then I thought of myself at 12, at 17, at 24, always standing between disaster and the man who created it. I wanted to tell that girl she could step aside. I wanted to tell her the crash was not her fault. I wanted to tell her love did not require bruised hope and empty pockets. I slid the ring back across the table toward Damien. His face closed before I spoke, preparing to accept the loss without argument. That almost made me cry. Not yet, I said. Keep it safe for me. His hand stilled near the ring. Emily, I am not choosing you today. My voice shook, but only a little. I am choosing myself. And when I choose anything after that, I want it to come from a place that is mine. Damien looked at me for a long time, and something in his eyes bowed without his body moving at all. Then I will wait outside that place. Months passed in ordinary miracles. I went back to class. I took the bus when I wanted to and Damien's driver when the weather was cruel. I moved into the East Room until it felt less like a borrowed museum and more like a quiet corner of my own life. I visited a legal office and signed papers that protected my name. I opened a bank account my father could not touch. I learned that healing did not arrive like lightning. It came like morning, pale and slow, returning color to things I thought would always stay gray. Damien and I did not become a fairy tale. Fairy tales were too clean for people like us. We became something harder and more honest. Two people standing on opposite sides of a broken contract, learning how to speak without turning every word into a weapon. One evening in late spring, after my final nursing exam, I found him in the garden behind the mansion, holding the ring in his open palm. This time, he did not offer it like a claim. He offered it like a question. And this time, when I took it, my hand did not shake. He came to collect a debt. But in the end, he became the first man who taught me I was never one.